Spare ribs. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad you could join us tonight. It's January the 3rd. It's cold. I like to have some summer brought into the house when it's so cold outside. So tonight we're going to have barbecue. And no, we can't get out to the grill, or we could, but it would be kind of cold and uncomfortable. But you can make barbecue in your roaster or your oven that makes you think of summer. And that's what I'm going to do tonight. So what we're going to have is some dry rub spare ribs. And I'm going to cook them in my roaster oven. And I'm going to use the low-carb barbecue sauce that I made last night and posted the video. And I'll take you through that process. It's easy peasy and not a big mess. We'll be back. Well, I've moved that beautiful chunk of the meat out of the way for right now. I'm just going to talk a little bit about dry rubs. And this, I'm going to make a dry rub, and this is just one dry rub. You could make it many ways. About the only thing that is consistent in a dry rub is salt. And I have kosher salt here. You can use any kind of salt. I use kosher salt for a lot of things, mostly because it's coarse. Doesn't have, most kosher salt doesn't have anti-caking ingredients in it, and so you can use it for canning too. But I like kosher salt for dry rubbing meat. So I have here kosher salt. And I'm going to start out with a half cup of that. Now, when you start talking about salting meat before you cook it, you can find lots and lots and lots of arguments among chefs. But the argument is generally not about whether you should salt meat before you cook it, but how far ahead. And brining is, brining being salt in water, is pretty accepted as a good way to tenderize meat and to make its flavor better. And some people think you should brine hours before. Some people think you can just rub with salt hours before. Some like to rub right before. I personally think it doesn't matter. The important thing is the salt, not necessarily when you use it. Salt tends to tenderize, and it also helps the meat brown. And browning is more than just color. Browning has to do with the flavor. Brown meat tastes better than not browned meat. And so I salt meat for the tenderizing effect, the flavor effect, and the browning effect. I also like brown sugar in my rub, especially on lamb. We're doing pork tonight, but brown sugar in a rub for lamb is just amazing. Now, if you've watched my videos, you know I don't use real brown sugar. I don't use sugar. I'm diabetic, and Fred's on a restricted sugar diet, so I use chemicals. But, you know, everything in life is chemicals. This particular brown sugar substitute is made with erythritol. I'm not even sure I'm saying that right. You can also use xylitol. It's harder to find a brown sugar substitute than it is a white sugar substitute. But they are available. You can find them. So I've got a half cup of brown sugar substitute, half cup of kosher salt. You can use real brown sugar if you like. I used to use real brown sugar. I have here about a 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. And that's, of course, up to you. And I have here about a half teaspoonful of dry mustard. And I have about a half teaspoonful, about a quarter teaspoonful of powdered curry. You can add chili powder to yours. You can add whatever it is that you like. According to what I'm doing, I vary on the dried herbs. Always salt, always sugar, generally a little pepper of some kind. And I'm going to sprinkle in some of my dried oregano from my garden. So, what we've got here then is a dry rub. And we're not going to add any liquid when we cook these ribs. And let's talk about that. Just adding liquid to meat doesn't necessarily tenderize it. If you want to use liquid in cooking meat, it needs to be in a braise, meaning it needs to be cooked very, very slow. And generally you use a braise on a cut of meat that's not going to be tender otherwise. A chuck roast, a shoulder roast. But better cuts of meat can be roasted at a higher temperature, and the flavor is different, and it's more like the barbecue flavor that you get when you cook outside, because you have that nice browning. So I'm cooking spare ribs tonight, which are generally not as tender as, say, baby back ribs, but they are suitable for roasting or grilling, and you can do this dry rub for grilling too. So I've got the ribs out. I let them come to room temperature by sitting out about 20 minutes, and then we'll do the dry rub. Be right back. Okay, here are our lovely spare ribs. Full disclosure, this is half of a slab of ribs that we had, and I've already cooked the other half, and they were so good. My mouth is just watering waiting on this. So, how do you do dry rub, and why do you do dry rub? Well, meat can't brown in the presence of water. If the meat is wet, when it comes up to temperature, the water will boil and prevent the browning that you're looking for to get your flavor and your appearance. So this meat has been out now for about 20 minutes. It's not actually room temperature, but it is warmer than refrigerator. And you do want to let your meat warm up a little bit before you cook it, no matter what meat you're cooking. I'm drying it, just kind of splotching it with a paper towel to get any excess water off. So, we're drying it. What's going to hold the rub on? Well, I have here a little sunflower oil. And I'm going to rub a little of the sunflower oil over the surface of the meat. And yes, I know the meat already has fat on it, but the fat's in spots, and I want the rub to stick. And then I'm going to liberally, more salt than you think you want, rub evenly all over. Then we'll turn it. And I'm going to move this piece of aluminum foil now because it's got the liquid on it. Let's dry this side, and don't forget the edges. Yes, I touched my bottle. I'll have to wash it. In oil. And more salt than you think you want. You know, most of this is going to actually cook off. Once it's served its purpose, it'll go down in the bottom of your pan. Okay. We're going to let this sit about 5 minutes and then put it in the roaster. I'll show you the next step. This is my Nesco convection oven and roaster oven, and it's preheated to 350. Inside is a rack. Now, you don't have to have a convection roaster oven. I like it because I can use it to cook bread and it will brown. But if you just have a regular roaster, you can do the ribs by this method in it at 350. You could put them on a rack and put them in your oven. The convection is not necessary for this. Let me take the lid off. So we're preheated here. I have this rack down in here, and you place the ribs fat side up. Sorry, my light's not too good there. And it's not going to be good. So place the ribs fat side up, and any meat that you're roasting, you know, should be fat side up. Now, this was a pretty good sized slab of ribs. I didn't get the weight. I'm going to put a thermometer in after about an hour and check. We're wanting to cook it to about 350 internal temperature. I'm sorry, 150 internal temperature. And then we'll take it out and wrap it up for 30 minutes and let it come on up to well done temperature. It's pork. I don't like pork less than well done. It's tricky when you're checking the temperature on ribs because if you touch the bone, it throws it off. So I'm going to count on about 2 hours for these, but I am going to double check it with a thermometer. And I'll be back in about an hour or so, and we'll check and see where we are. Okay, we're about an hour and a half in. Not done. We're going to check the temperature. Now, it's tricky checking with the bones because you need to avoid the bones to get an accurate temperature. So we're getting up close. We're right at 150. We're going to cook for about another 30 minutes and call it done. Okay, here we go. These are ready to go. And they look so yummy. You'll see they browned nicely. Whoops. So I'm putting them on a piece of aluminum foil. And I'm going to wrap them up for about 20 minutes, and they finish their cooking like that. So we'll be back. We'll be back in 20 minutes, and we'll plate this up. Here we go. Barbecued spare ribs, or roasted spare ribs. And if you can see, here is our barbecue sauce that we made last night on the side. They are crunchy crispy on the outside, browned nicely, and the dry rub does that even if you're cooking in a roaster. And luckily, I have a guinea pig today to try these out. Hold on. Granddaughter Jessica has volunteered or drafted to test the ribs. And so, Jessica, grab one, dig in, tell me what you think. Gonna dip it in the sauce?
Yes, ma'am.
Raise up a little. There you go.
It tastes fantastic, I promise.
Okay, good. Of course, I'm Grandma. You couldn't say otherwise.
Of course not.
Thank you, Jessica. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. I'm going to go have dinner with my granddaughter. See you again tomorrow.